happy world of 5FM radio on 89.9 in Lusaka and the surrounding area. Remember, we are also live on our partner radio stations. Southern Province is well covered on Wave FM radio. That is on 98.7. We are live also in Kabwe, Central Province on 91.1. That's Spice FM radio. And radio is also on and carrying this particular program live on their platform in Chinsali, covering the rest of Mchinga Province on 88.1. And Tuta FM radio on 90.7 in Mansa, carrying live this particular program, and also live on the Copper Belt, iWave FM radio. Now, iWave FM radio is based in Chingola on 90.1 FM, and it's covering the rest of the Copper Belt. And we are grateful that you could find time to tune in today. We are also live on our Facebook page, and that's 5FM Radio Zambia. And also on our YouTube channel, we are live there, and that's 5FM Zambia. So look out for that, and like the page, follow us on those platforms, and be able to share with us all your concerns and comments. And if you have any questions for our guest today, I'm your host, Zakaria Banda. Now, later on, I'll give you, our listeners, an opportunity to call in and interact with our guest on the numbers to be shared with you during the course of the program. My guest this morning is Honorable Wynter Kabimba, State Council. Welcome to the program. Good to see you.
Yeah, Zach, and good morning, listeners.
And welcome back home.
Thank you. You are very bad neighbors, you guys.
No, we are aware. We are aware that you exist, and,
Okay.
and we keep hearing you in our menus, bulletins. So
Thank you.
so we are in tune with what
Okay.
your comments are
Thank you very much.
on happenings of this country.
Yes.
We are grateful to have you because obviously we would want to have the economic front party's position on the happenings of in this country, especially political, economical, and it's important that we discuss these things now. Just seeking your mind on the political environment that this country is in today. What is your position on the political environment of this country?
Well, you have to answer that question, or one has to answer that question by way of a comparative approach. Okay, why did people vote the PF out of power in August of 2021? I think the answer is simple. They were looking for a better political environment. They are looking for an environment, that was free from, the systemic cadreism that they saw under PF, the violence perpetrated by that political party with impunity against the police. There was an incident, if you remember, just next door here, or the violence against the innocent citizens, the glaring corruption that was going on, and many, many vices. And the Zambian people said, we have to rescue ourselves from this environment. We have to rescue ourselves from this political party. Because everything that was said to PF at the time fell on deaf ears. And PF just reached a point where they just didn't care about the citizens of this country and what they said. And in came the UPND, led by HH, who gave a completely contrasting situation of hope that this cadreism, violence, corruption will end. And hence the results that we saw. Of course, there is a school of thought within PF that the 2021 election was rigged. Maybe. I'm not sure myself. But even without any element of rigging, I think PF had reached a point where it was incorrigible as a political organization. It reached a point at which it was becoming a danger to democracy. So, the hope of the Zambian people in ushering in UPND was that things were going to be completely different. Different not in terms of getting worse, but different in terms of getting better. Is that what we are seeing today? No. We're not seeing that. We have reported cases of rampant corruption by a political party that rode on the trump card of corruption in PF. We are still seeing flashpoints of political violence and harassment of the former head of state, uncalled for. We are still seeing the abuse of institutions like the police being used against the citizens of this country. Arbitrary arrests and detentions. Many of my colleagues in the opposition have been arrested and detained, and at times refused to be granted bond in matters or cases that are bondable. I think we have seen more arbitrary arrests under UPND than we ever saw under PF. Now, all these things are horrifying citizens. And citizens now are beginning to speak, not only opposition party leaders, even ordinary citizens. When you get to the markets now, when you get on minibuses, you get these stories that this is not what we expected, that things have gotten worse. And that must worry HH. If people are saying that things have gotten worse, like State Council John Sangwa, I think, said once, he didn't expect that he could see something worse than what he saw under PF. Because everybody thought that PF was the worst. But UPND is disproving that theory. So that is where we are politically. We have seen abuse of state institutions. We have seen cases of regional and tribal appointments, very, very blatant. And sometimes even those of us that belong, to the Tonga grouping, under the Bantu Botatwe, feel ashamed and we feel embarrassed, even as we are not members of the UPND. Because there's a point at which you should do, your conscience should just get nod that this cannot be the correct thing to do. Okay? This theory, that one group had suffered so much under another group is wrong. And even if it is right, I don't think that is how you build a nation, by paying a wrong with another wrong. The English adage that two wrongs do not make a right is correct. The Christian doctrine value an eye for an eye, which was condemned by Christ, is wrong. And these are the leaders that call themselves Christians. They go to church every Saturday. They go to church every Sunday. And yet they practice an eye for an eye. And proclaim that they are believers in Jesus Christ. So That's the kind of political environment which has been cultivated by the UPND in the last 2 years at such an accelerated rate that if it is not stopped, if the conscience of the leadership in the UPND is not pricked, then we are headed for very difficult times.
Now, Mr. Kabimba, I would want to bring you to the issue of the fight against corruption. I mean, the Auditor General's report is seriously raising a lot of issues. For example, in the report, there is a part where the Auditor General has revealed that government had procured a lot of brand new vehicles, which cannot be located today. The whereabouts of these vehicles is not known. There's another issue that was identified in the Auditor General's report, which is the teacher recruitment process.
Yeah.
Much as it had received a lot of attention, it had recruitment committees that obviously included the Anti-Corruption Commission to sit on those recruitment committees. But the report is showing that this same recruitment exercise, it is indicating that it recruited teachers who had no grade 12 certificates, for example. How then do you describe the corruption? Because now the message is indicating that the corruption fight is not about those who occupied office prior. This is rooted in the government itself. How do we approach the fight if you are seeing these?
Zach, the problem that we have had is that we have tended to give a wrong definition to corruption. Okay? And we have given corruption a prefix that this is political corruption, that only those that hold political office are corrupt. In fact, corruption goes down the ladder to the bottom. Okay? I was reading last night, I think there was a headline in News Diggers, I don't know if you saw it, which quoted the Minister of Health, Sylvia Masebo.
Yes.
And it read corruption worries Masebo. And Sylvia in that statement says corruption is rampant. And she fingers out the groups involved. Civil servants, politicians, chiefs, and others. Do chiefs work for government? No. Are they politicians? Ideally, no. So I think the issue of corruption must be looked at in a broader context. And Corruption Commission, Zach, is very worried about politicians who are in possession of property suspected to have been in process of crime. If they cared to go into Chalala, if they cared to go into the New Kasama area and just find out how many directors of government, director level, and PSs have put up mansions there that are way, way beyond, their emoluments, then they will come to realize the extent of corruption in this country. So to seemingly harass Bowman Rusambo as an example and a few others, it's not what is going to solve the problem. Now let me tell you this. The issue of corruption, in my view, will take a long time to fight because we are dealing with the symptoms. I think the question that must be asked is, what is the cause of this rampant corruption? And this theory that I put across is not a justification to corruption. It is an attempt to explain the context of this corruption. Corruption is caused by a weak economy. Okay? When the Anti-Corruption Commission was set up under British aid, under DFID in 1980-81, we were all wondering why, the institution had been set up. Because there was hardly any corruption to talk about. There was hardly any corruption to talk about. And we were wondering, why has Kaunda, set up this institution? It is not because people were not corrupt. The view I take is because the economy was strong. There's no rampant corruption in the United States, not because those people are not disposed to corruption. It's because the economy is strong. You don't hear many cases of corruption in the United Kingdom, not because those guys are angels or saints, but because the economy is strong. So the government that is going to succeed to fight corruption is the one that is going to take a two-pronged approach, double-pronged approach. Fight corruption and also improve the economy. Okay? The other problem that is related to that is this. For as long as you are going to have business people in government whose main livelihood is to run a business, you will not fight corruption. So you have a president who is a businessman. You have ministers that are business people, etc., etc.
Why do you say so?
Because these are interested groups. So when you go back, to Kaunda's time, when Kaunda became very unpopular with the leadership code, very unpopular. And Kaunda's leadership code was either you become a leader and you remain a leader, or you remain a business person. Choose between the two. I'm not forcing you. If you choose to become a leader, you will not do business. Because ideally there is a conflict between the two. And we criticized Kaunda. And maybe this is time that we go back to see how Kaunda saw the direction in which this country should have gone. And this is where I come to lay blame at the doorsteps of our scholars at the University of Zambia. These are things that they must be writing on. These are things that they must be researching on to give direction to this country. You see the same problem in South Africa. President Ramaphosa, one of the richest men, in South Africa. His ministers, very rich. You can't run. Kaunda's leadership code was the best for any political leadership of a third world country.
Living in times where declaration of interest is respected.
Yeah, declaration of interest is respected, but if your institutions are weak, okay, the problem that we have in third world countries is that the politicians are stronger than the institutions. The president is stronger than any institution of the state, which is not the case in the UK, which is not the case in the United States. I'm sure you know, I don't have to tell you this, that in the United States, the mobile phone of Joe Biden as president of the United States is bagged by the CIA. Why? Because even Biden can be a threat to national security of the United States. Do they do that here? No. The president is an angel who cannot commit any offense, who cannot betray this country. So I'm giving that comparison to show you this issue of the state and the human beings, the politicians that wield the power. Okay? Look at Israel. They had to summon Prime Minister Netanyahu to the police headquarters to go and record a statement from him. Corruption. Can that happen in Zambia? No ways. Maybe in South Africa. Because the South Africans have started with the very, very strong institutions. And if they remain so, they would be able to build a democracy. So we have all these multiple problems that face us. And the government that is going to succeed is a government that will be led by men and women that will say, these things are wrong. They were wrong, with the previous governments, and they should be wrong now. I raised the question one day in a cabinet meeting when one issue was being discussed, trying to justify this wrong, which we said was wrong under MMD. And now I listen to people around this table trying to justify it as a right. I said, if MMD were right, why did we condemn them? Why didn't we just join MMD? I thought we fought MMD to come and correct these vices. And everybody around the table went quiet. So I have been there. I've seen this hypocrisy by our politicians, not only in the UPND, but even in PF when I served there. Okay? That we stand on an anthill and scream, that this is wrong. But when we walk into State House, when we walk into these offices, the wrong becomes a right. And hence, the political situation, Zach, that you ask me to describe.
Let's discuss the cost of living. I know that in your description of the fight against corruption, you've stated that the only way fighting corruption will be effective is where one is fighting it, but also raising the standards of the economy.
Yes.
Amidst the situation of the high cost of living, how is that achievable? But first of all, let's look at the high cost of living itself. This should be fueling. This should be a catalyst to even fuel more corruption.
Yes, you're right. You're right. We told HH, and I've always given this example. I was having lunch with a few of my colleagues, and a diplomat came and joined me at a table where I was seated, from one of the European Union countries. That was during PF days. And he asked me a question. He said, why are you guys pushing for this IMF program? Because it will make things worse than what you see now. This was a European Union diplomat. The IMF program will make things worse than what you see now. In fact, he went further and he said, you may even have street demonstrations. So we warned the HH that this IMF program we are jumping about, to being excited about, Bwana, will not solve the problems. It will compound these problems. Isn't that what is happening? Yes, it is. That's what is happening. So this leadership that you can solve the existing economic problems using neoliberal theories, the same mechanism that created the problem, is difficult to understand. for people, for people like me. Okay? That the same guy that put you into this debt, you think can help you disentangle yourselves from this debt. And for some reason, the guy sells a theory, a very good narrative, to many of our people that have the least understanding of what goes on in this world. And they praise, the man. And you hear UPND praise singers, things now will get better. Things will get better now. They won't, mana. They can only get worse. And you can see how he's fumbling, looking for excuses. No, the fuel is because of the war in Ukraine, between Russia and Ukraine. No, the problem of fertilizer is because there is a war in Russia and Ukraine. It has come to dawn on him that this is not 1 + 1 = 2. This is a difficult situation. He is refusing to accept this denialism, that the source of this is actually the same program that you are trying to implement. That's a sort of inferiority complex, that you are being praised, by people outside while your people are grumbling. During yesterday's program, on Pan-African Radio, I listened to one of praise singers saying, "Oh, haven't you heard the World Bank saying that Zambia is on the right course? Haven't you heard that Nelly Muta has been given an award? And how you want to be proud of what Joe Biden says, that there is democracy in Zambia, as against me, your fellow citizen? So Joe Biden becomes your benchmark for democracy? No. That what the World Bank says must hold rank, and not your people. So I'll recommend a small book that I'm reading now by Chinua Achebe. Very easy to read. It's entitled Hopes and Impediments. I've read this book, 2-3 times now. It takes you back to 1957, 1958, when Ghana was gaining its independence. Hopes of the Ghanaian people, which represents, the hopes of every African country, at independence. And what Chinua Achebe refers to as the impediments in the way of these hopes. Okay? So it's one of his last books before he died. I believe that these are books that should be prescribed, at secondary school, to make our young people understand that the World Bank cannot be your savior, that the IMF cannot be the Messiah, and they have never been saviors and messiahs for any third world country. But when the man comes, from France, lands at the airport, there are droves and droves, of people that have been bussed there, giving the impression that he has met Jesus and now he has come with all the solutions. And yet the situation is getting worse and worse and worse by the day. Take time to jump on the minibuses and listen to the insults from people. Not what we say. We're even polite, in the opposition. Get on a minibus and listen to what the people say. And you know that some of these minibuses are run by OP, if you didn't know the system. Some of them are run by OP to gather intelligence. And I don't know what they are telling the man. The people are angry. The people are hungry. And he himself said in one video clip, HH said, a hungry person is an angry person. That's a level where the Zambians have reached now. So the high cost of living is not something that you can postpone.
Mm.
I've heard people saying, "Oh no, but give it, up to 2026." I should sit back hungry until 2026. Is that a promise that you can make to me? No.
So how do you then foresee the future of between now and 2026? And I'm glad you brought in the issue of Ghana. I think Ghana was equally on the IMF program, and they have since filed, as a country, they have since filed in bankruptcy.
Yes. Yes.
Is this an indication that seeking for a debt restructuring is another and paying the debt is another?
Exactly. The guys, Mana, that go to the bank smiling are the creditors and the IMF, not you and me, not the countries that are indebted. This is a deliberately constructed debt trap. It is constructed in such a manner that the Western countries, the United States that are praising HH so much, the UK, Tony Blair, just to crooks. They deliberately construct this, blind us, not only blind in terms of sight, but even mentally. Okay? And give us the impression they love us so much. I made a statement, when they were negotiating. I said, let me tell you this. I said, even if HH fell in love with the World Bank president, it will not
as an intimate
yes,
love.
It will not make a difference because she is not the owner of the World Bank. The World Bank is run by a board of governors, and the constitution of the World Bank is that the president of the World Bank shall always be an American. That's what the constitution says. From the time when it was established, 1945-46, the president of the World Bank shall always be, American. The head of the IMF shall come from one of the European countries. And the World Bank president is appointed by the American president. There's no election. He's an appointee of the American president. So, Ghana was at one time touted, as a model. What is it today? Ghana has been declared bankrupt 2-3 times as a state, as a government, many times.
And what does that mean?
It means that this is not the right way of doing it. They must find the correct way of doing it. Okay? They post Ghana, that Ghana is doing very well, and so that the others can fall into the same trap. And then you go there and they collapse Ghana. So Ghana is no longer, the best model to look at. Okay? So the point I'm making is this. We need to interrogate another model of development. We ought to interrogate another model of development. Is there another model of development? Yes. The Chinese have been able to show us in the last 40 years that there is another model of development which is driven by the state. The Chinese have been able to uplift 400 million people out of poverty in 30 years, unprecedented in the life of humankind. And then you want to listen to the Americans, who tell you, no, this is just dictatorship, this is authoritarianism, and
So you recommend the Chinese way of development? Is that what you are likely to adopt as a party in government, for example?
I have seen it work, and I would have no doubt to go that way. I've been to China several times. The reason why the Americans are so worried about the Chinese now is that they are being overtaken by the Chinese. An authoritarian system, but which is delivering on technology, which is delivering on the cost of living that is affordable by its people, infrastructure development, everything that you can ever conceive.
But if the Chinese way of development is to be adopted, it means that there will be a lot of things that need to change constitution-wise as well, because then Wynter Kabimba must stay longer than 5 years, must stay longer than 10 years, because then this model requires longer than 10 years to achieve.
Yes. Why? Why do you think that they want Kagame to continue beyond the ridiculous 2-term limit? Is because they realize that's the only way you can bring about development. Okay? Why do you think Singapore developed so well under Lee Kuan Yew? Is because for 30 years it was run by one political party. Why do you think Malaysia has been able, all these so-called Asian tigers? Okay? And there is a study which has established this, that if you want to develop, you must give development in the real sense time. The reason why the United States is different is because there is marginally no difference between the Republicans, and the Democrats. The difference in the two political parties is that the Republicans argue that if you want the economy to grow, don't tax business too highly. Okay? So that business can save money, and the money that has been saved by business can expand and create employment. That's the Republican Party doctrine. The Democrats believe that if you want the economy to grow, tax the rich. Excuse me. Tax the rich in order to save the poor. Okay? But in terms of everything else, an enemy who is somebody who is identified as an enemy by the Republicans will automatically be an enemy for the Democrats, even when they come to power. The embargo on Cuba has been running from 1962, when J.F. Kennedy imposed it on Cuba. Okay? And the governments have been changing, Republican, Democrat, Republican, and the Democrats have never lifted that embargo because J.F. Kennedy was Republican. So that is how they look at things. Here, we are running a democracy, so-called democracy, which every 5, 10 years, 20 years, when you change government, you must start afresh. Even something that was good must be. That's the case of the democracy in third world countries. So you change the human beings, change everything else. If they are the way of changing the color of water, they would change the color of water, because it was It had this color under PF, so under UPND it must have another color. But also what you also have to realize, Zach, is that we are not our only people. This is also one thing that we don't realize in third world countries. That HH is not in charge. I know it annoys him when people call him a puppet. I know it can be annoying. It can be upsetting. Okay? He is not his own man. So these accolades, that you hear from abroad are intended to keep him on a leash. They're intended to keep him on a leash. So they tell him when he should go to China and when he shouldn't engage the Chinese. The instructions come from Washington through the US Embassy. They tell him. So any nationalist leader in the third world country will not be popular with the West. Anyone that wants to be independent will not be popular with the West. The only ones that are popular with the West are Bene Ramaphosa, Bene Chechi, because they know that they are products of the capitalist system. They are worried about what type of car they should drive, what food they should eat. Do they eat prawns? What type of house they live in. Those are things that consume their minds, not govern
So
the
if you think the UPND government is pro-Western, I mean,
not that I think it is.
If you say so,
yes.
Would you say that, for example, the recent trip to China by the president was cosmetic?
Yes, it was. How many trips did he make to the US before he made that trip to China? How many trips? Several trips. And then you are told, that these trips, are meant to market the country. That HH is the chief marketer of the country. That they are meant, to woo investment. You tell me what investment has come to this country in the last 2 years. You tell me what meaningful, investment has come to this country in the last 2 years that HH has been in power. Nothing. Where do you have a factory here in Lusaka, Zach? Where in Lusaka do you have a new factory put up by an investor that HH met in Washington or in the UK? Where? Zero. Where do you have an investor in Kabwe? Zero. Kabwe is still as dead as the day is long, as dead as the way PF left it. Go to any copper belt town, so-called mining area. My young brother was in Livingstone, and he was telling me when he came home, a week ago, the place is dead. And you call that a tourism, capital. It's dead. You find 2-3 cars parked pakati pali ShopRite paja in Livingstone. So where? And I ask myself, you tell me, in this day and age, when there is social media, advanced, communication system, globalized village, do you really think that it will take the president to go and meet some chamber of commerce in the United States and tell them that Zambia is a good investment destination? They know it. They probably know it better than him. There's a story about Fidel Castro and MMD. There was a group of Zambian officials that went to Cuba, and then they were given an appointment to meet Fidel. So Fidel asks them, what is the temperature now in Zambia? I can't remember the month when they were there. So of course they didn't know. So one of them guessed an answer. And Fidel says, no, it can't be true. Because Zambia is so many latitude, below the equator, and if it is that this time, of the year, that can't be the temperature in Zambia. So this figment of people's imaginations that HH can go and meet Chinese investors and try to convince them because they don't know Zambia. It's a myth. Total myth. Total myth. And a waste of time.
So what is Economic Front Party's policy on foreign direct investment?
Very good question. Firstly, we must restructure the Zambia Development Agency, ZDA. Restructure it, Mwana, in such a way that investment must be segmented. There must be areas for local investors, Zambians, who shall be empowered by government. Empowered not, through, free stipends, No. Money which they are able to borrow from state banks at affordable interest rates. And I have in mind in this, the area of agriculture. You can't give an investment permit and a work permit to the Chinese to come and rear chickens in Zambia. No, I don't think that is right. Okay? Because there are many, they are empowered. Then they can actually feed this nation. What is happening now is that investors come in and tell ZDA where and what they want to invest in. No, ZDA must tell them that this is a no-go area. This is for Zambians. For you as a foreigner, large-scale mining, that's yours. We've left it to you to invest. Small-scale mining, no, this is for Zambians. Okay? I heard, at some, I think it was a church saying, oh, no, you see, what we need now is, to get technology from you. No one is going to give you technology for lunch. Technology is property. Okay? Kaunda tried it. Transfer of technology. No technology was transferred here. HH was in Israel. Didn't Israel go there? Which Israeli investors ever came here? Which Israeli investors ever came here? Nothing. So that's what we would do as Economic Front. Segment this, make sure that there are areas of investment that are exclusively for Zambians. When Margaret Thatcher was doing privatization in the 1980s, after she came to power in 1979, you know that they used to make a policy decision that this company that we are privatizing, a French should not participate. No French company should be allowed to buy it. No German company should be allowed to buy it. That's what they used to do. And then they would pick out on another one, and then they would say, no American company should be allowed to buy this, to bid for this. That is how foreign direct investment is directed and treated.
So we have no control on that.
Nothing. So you have foreigners that are coming here to mold the blocks. and the Department of Immigration gives them work permits. Kubona upanga ma block. Really? And like one of my friends was saying, you know, how many blocks can you make, you know, to buy a Range Rover? So ideally what is happening, they are using these companies for money laundering. That's what is going on. What is our security, you know, wing? You can buy a Range Rover for yourself and your wife and your son from modding blocks. No ways. No ways. I have a friend of mine, a Spanish friend of mine, who was in block making. And I stopped over one day, you know, at his place. And he says to me, Wynter, I said to him, have you stopped making blocks? He says, yeah, I stopped. I said, why? He said, I can't compete with these other companies because I don't know how they're even breaking even. I've tried even just to break even. But drive around Lusaka and see how many of these companies are owned by foreigners to make blocks. But ukafika so pesa pale na moto wamene hapa kinga to buy blocks. But they are stinking rich out of block making. That's another area of crime. So we shall stop that. And we are very clear about that as EF. I saw it in PF. It was wrong and it is still wrong. And I'm surprised that it is right under UPND. Okay? So there are a lot of things. And investment all over the world. You can't go to the United States, Zaki, and tell them, you know, where you want to invest. No. They will tell you, this is a security area. This is the only country, you know, where you can privatize a telecommunication company like Zamtel, like we saw under MMD. Zamtel, telecommunication company, national security, you give it to a private company, which is linked to the state, which tomorrow can be your enemy, and they can cut off all your lines. I mean, who does that?
Is that the reason why you reversed that decision? You were a board chair, by the way, no?
No, I was not chairman. I was a member of the board. And when Lap Green sent their people to me to come and represent them, you know, against the government, I refused. I told them, keep your money. I was one of those people that was against that decision that was made by MMD. Nowhere. You can't go to the United States and say, I want to set up a telecommunication company. They'll tell you, sorry, Bwana, not here. You can't go to the city of Los Angeles and tell them, I've come here to open up a water company to be supplying water, you know, to, you know, one community, you know. They'll tell you, sorry, Bwana, that is not your area of investment. That is for an American. It's a national security issue. Suppose you poison all the, you know, the water for the, you know, for the whole community. But here, anything goes, as long as muntu abuyana a briefcase with $500,000. Come on.
This is the Thursday edition of The Burning Issue here on the Happy World of 5FM Radio. We are also live on partner radio stations, Tuta FM in Mansa. We are live on it on 90.7. We are live on Muchinga Radio in Chinsali, covering the rest of Mchinga province. Live also on iWave FM Radio in Chingora, covering the rest of the Copper Belt. We are grateful to Spice FM because they are carrying this program as well on 91.1 in Kabwe, covering Central Province. And Lusaka on 89.95 FM is well covered. And Southern Province is on 98.7 on Wave FM Radio. My guest this morning is Economic Front Party leader, Mr. Wynter Kabimba, State Council. And of course, we will be taking your phone calls because we promised that we will give you an opportunity to interact with our guest. And remember, the number that you'll be calling us on is 0955-221515. And for your messages, either WhatsApp or SMS, please send them to 0761 912493. Now, I'll be taking phone calls just after this question. Mr. Kabimba, you mentioned that there is so much abuse of public institution under
Yes.
this government,
Yes.
other than probably which you have already mentioned, like the police. And which other ones are you referring to? And what incidences are you referring to that describe the abuse on them?
Oh, the recent appointment of the Auditor General is one of them.
How so?
That you can appoint a man who is over age, who doesn't qualify under the Constitution, very clearly spelled out. If what I've read is true, that you can be appointed if you are above the age of 60. The appointee, from what I've read, is 64. And then the vice president stands up, in parliament and says, but the man is subject to ratification. Subject to ratification, even when the matter is clear, you don't have the decency to withdraw the name and appoint another person who qualifies, even age-wise. What arrogance is that? How can that be an answer from government? Okay? In 2011, I don't know if you remember the incident.
Yes.
He nominated 10 people instead of 8 under the Constitution.
Right.
And I went to him and I said, Bwana, you have over-nominated. The Constitution doesn't allow you to nominate beyond 8 people. Okay? And he reversed the other 2 nominations immediately. A man who was less educated than me, HH. Because he respected the Constitution, upon which he took an oath to respect and uphold the Constitution of the Republic of Zambia. And the vice president stands up. I was shocked, to my amazement and horror. And he says, no, but the ratification process, is not yet in place. Come on. Mango. Really? Now, when you have such glaring incidents of impunity, disrespect and disregard for the highest law of the land, then you must get extremely worried about the direction that this country is taking and the intention of the president and those that are leading this country. You'd expect, the president in a meek manner to say, sorry, I didn't know at the time when I was making this appointment, and I hereby reverse, the appointment. Okay? I remember in the United States, I think it was during the time of Bill Clinton, if I'm not mistaken. There was a name of that he had nominated of a Secretary of State. Okay? And it transpired that that lady had actually employed a maid from Haiti or Mexico, one of the two, who got into the US illegally and was still an illegal immigrant. When they brought it to the attention of Bill Clinton, he withdrew the name. He didn't say, let it go, the committee will decide what to do. He immediately withdrew the name. That is what a meek leader does. That's what it means.
So what are you telling us? If the example you've given about the late President Sata making that mistake, and we are seeing one which you're responding to now, What does this tell the general citizenry about the president? Do they in some way decide these things as an individual? What are advisors for? Because then these are questions that people are saying, so who advised?
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Because all of us know that the president, at the end of the day, is advised. There are people that get paid to advise the president. So it is very easy for the president to say, listen, I was misled. Okay? Very easy for him. And the nation will understand. Poor guy, he was misled. So we don't expect him to check the national registration card of the appointee. But when the president makes no mention of that and simply keeps quiet, acquiescing, to the wrong, and trying to put an institution like parliament on the spot, then I get extremely worried. That's political arrogance. I don't care. I am the president, and it shall be done my way. Now, a man like that, in public office is a danger to the national security of this country and to the existence of this country. And also, let me tell you this before I leave that point. This is why you will find that these acts of following each other after every government will not come to an end. Because if this man, for whatever reason, is appointed, okay?
And ratified by parliament.
And ratified by parliament, which really will shock me. It means all the emoluments that you would have received for the period that is in the office are illegal. And the next government has a right, to say to him, pay back what you received in terms of emoluments. So even the man himself must be intelligent enough to say to the president, please save me and withdraw my name. He will have to pay back this money at one point or another. He has to pay back this money because the payments would have been illegal under the constitution.
Then we'll say Wynter Kabimba's government is witch hunting.
It's witch hunting. This is what we thought, in 2011, I think 2011, just before elections, we took out an action against MMD as PF, saying that since parliament was dissolved, the ministers should vacate offices. Okay? We commenced an action in the High Court. And the High Court threw out that action. Sat back. You said, okay. PF comes and wins. They do the same thing that we were challenging in 2011. They do exactly the same thing. What happened, after that? They were challenged, and up to today, some people haven't even paid back the emoluments they received during that time. So why do politicians act like this? Okay.
Let me take phone calls. I've got a message on Facebook. It says, President Kabimba, good morning. This is Steve from Lusaka, working in a Kansanshi mine in Solwezi. What is your take on mining in our country? Because what I'm seeing here is so disheartening.
Yes.
FQM lied to the government that they have expanded mining and have employed 2,500 workers, which I have not seen anything of that sort.
Yes.
As I'm right now, I'm in the mine working on the excavator, a rock breaker. I'm not. So I'm right in it, and I'm saying these things because I'm seeing them. is Steve, comes from Lusaka, but working for Kansanshi Mine, speaking right by what he's seeing.
Yeah. Look, to be honest with you, these large-scale mining companies that invest in third world countries are robbers. Okay? They are robbers. They rob these nations. And I don't know the facts, but what Steve is saying may not be very far from the truth. And if you want, you can read a book, entitled The Machine by a guy called Tom Burgess. And he came and conducted research here in Zambia in the mining industry. And Steve Burgess in The Looting Machine says the mining employees, and he was talking about all the mining employees according to his research, pay more tax to the Zambian government than the mining companies. You tell me how that is possible with the millions of kwacha or dollars that they siphon out, out of these minerals against the employees that are paid slave wages. How can the employees pay more tax than the companies? Okay? And somehow, when the president is told, in that particular case, is told by First Quantum, that Mr. President, we are going to invest, the man jumps out of his skin. He thinks that's a success story. Okay? Guys like Steve, they have no opportunity to get anywhere near the president, to tell the president this is a hoax. No opportunity. The mine workers union of Zambia, is moribund. I don't mean to disrespect them. They can't fight international monopoly capital. They are too small. It's not their fault. Numau is too small to fight international monopoly capital. They have more access to HH than the local mine trade unionists here. They have more access. They can fly into Lusaka and meet HH the same day. I have not seen a meeting in Lusaka in the last 2 years between Muzi and the president. I haven't seen one. But just before we go to your phone calls,
yes,
there's an issue which I would like to raise, which I've not heard you colleagues in the media raise, and this is the issue about the flashpoint in Gaza, the ongoing slaughter of innocent children and women by the Israeli military. The attempt to decimate and obliterate from the face of this earth the Palestinian people and make them stateless. I'm surprised that, despite the ramifications of that conflict, despite, the diplomatic efforts that are developing, because that may just flare up into, a bigger war in that region that may involve, Iran, Saudi Arabia,
Egypt,
Hezbollah in Lebanon, and whatever. The president, when he was swearing in ambassadors, I think a few days ago, did not make mention of conflict. I've not heard of any statement from Mr. Kakubo. And yet his ministry is called Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Relations. The president instead was talking about the coups in West Africa. Okay? That's what he's worried about. The coup d'etat in West Africa and not the conflict in
Israel.
In Gaza.
In Gaza.
Shocking. Kaunda would have made a statement first day of war. Everybody has made a statement about that conflict. Not in terms of who is right, and wrong, but in terms of making an attempt to de-escalate that conflict. The Pope has made a statement now calling for peace in that part of the world. That this is not about who is right and wrong. This is about the principle that if Israel is defending itself because its security is at stake, is it being threatened by the babies that it is killing? Are the babies in Gaza a threat to Israel? 5 years old, a threat, to Israel's security? Are the women in Gaza that are going without food, without water, without electricity, a security risk, to Israel? No. And HH is quiet. UPND government is quiet. The press in this country is quiet. I don't think that we are living in the same world. This is a world now where what happens in Gaza affects us here, whether we like it or not. There has been an outstanding issue between Palestinians and Israelis. And the underlying principle of that issue by many is that there must be a two-state solution. Israel has a right to exist, just like the Palestinians have a right of statehood. That's a principle that is going to create peace. Anything in the hope, like the Americans are trying to drive it, that Israel can decimate Hamas is ridiculous, and it will not happen. You can't kill an idea. Okay? You can't kill an idea. So, the best is for Zambia to advocate for a two-state solution. I believe myself that Israel has a right to exist. And I don't think that it is right for any organization to call for the obliteration of Israel, or the annihilation of Israel. But likewise, Israel has no right to try to annihilate others from planet Earth. You can go to your question.
Let me take phone calls. 0955-221515. Good morning.
Correct. One Mutembo, George Compound.
Mutembo, good morning.
Yes. Comrade Wynter Kabimba, well spoken. In fact, the issue of Palestine for me is genocide. And what is more shocking is that the Americans, who call themselves the world police, have sent aeroplane carriers there. They want to wipe out a population which is evil and criminal, and we must continue speaking even if we stay in George Compound. Then another issue, Comrade Wynter Kabimba, I want your serious comment. We have heard of a journalist being fired for taking a photo of people queuing up for meal. Do you think that it is right for a person to lose a job just because he's doing their job? Another issue, comrades, there was those thugs from UPND that attempted to attack Comrade Zaki from 5FM. At least I read in one of the newspapers. Do you think it is right now to start intimidating people that are trying to give us information as in George Compound? Thank you very much. Continue concretating issues. Napia Mobile.
Thank you, Comrade Mutembo.
Can I take another one?
Yes, please.
Let me take this one. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Zach. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. Your name and where are you calling us from, sir?
My name is Monde and I'm calling with you in North.
The name again?
Monde.
Monde.
Yes, Mr. Monde. How are you, Mr. Kabimba?
I'm fine, Monde.
Yeah, doing about it now. I think for me, let me use the young. In a kumbari kwanga bakabimba bakamba chape kwino. Except that pamene vanari mu PF zvinhu vinango pamene vezvevoipa parija time sevana zvione vaoneka manje. I think iyo is vamuzambia vose chapo pamene muri mupower please muziona zvinhu vasense pamene zvinhu vakweva vachizvifanda kosense. Otherwise vaWynter Kabimba vakamba chape bwino except that sevari paground siniona party yavo kukura we ziko.
Zikomo kwambili Monde for that contribution. I'll take another one. Good morning.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning. Welcome to the program. Your name and where are you calling us from?
Yeah, this is Kingfred. I'm calling from.
Kingfred, you said?
Yes. Good morning, Wynter Kabimba.
Good morning, sir.
Kingfred from where?
Matitoa Tichongo constituency.
Chongwe constituency. Please go ahead, sir.
Yeah, Wynter Kabimba. First and foremost, I also want to concur with the previous background. I think the other question I want to ask you, being you as a former justice minister, we say if whenever kind of a government that they are not prosecuting the former head of state, Vazona or Vaboza, on the other side, they work on, but on the other side, they are attacking him. How many times have you seen the former head of state being attacked by the UPND cadres? Particularly in the DC, could have been on Banda and Vivarachazina Kuma, traditional ceremony, public, no Canada or not pursuing him. And then why do you want to come back to Kunyumba with the Makadas? And then after Makadas, just 2 weeks ago, the former state was attacked by UPND cadres. We have not seen any arrest, but the Timaona, vana vena vakatukana vayechechi within 3 days isaguriwa nanga wai vajamakadzi voma attack the former state why isaguriwa. So you picture that this government is harassment. That is a question yanayofuna ninkare makamaza clear. And then infunga mwankare na background siku non background. And then last question inanga Wynter Kabimba muzopo official pale va frame tunazira ati aya muzo vasachi zati ni vage. Why are choosing your fellow official instead of start concentrating of giving checks and balances to the current government? How true is that? We should not be the sector of Prekan court. You are going to defend yourself. Arrest my case.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Let me give you one more from Kabwe. The message here says, good morning, Zach and Mr. Kabimba. The Vice President clarified that the appointment of the current auditor in no way an abrogation of the Constitution, because he is just going to be acting Auditor General, and that the Constitution is silent on the age limit on someone appointed just to act as the Auditor General. What is your comment, State Council Kabimba? This is Nicholas Kapila from Kabwe, like I said. So those three are the two calls plus this message. Maybe you can respond.
Look, there is a tendency in the UPND to even refuse to accept the obvious. Okay? There is a tendency in the UPND of trying to act clever even where they are not clever. Excuse me.
Maybe just an addition to that question for clarity's sake.
Yeah.
Would you send an appointment to act for ratification?
Of course not. Of course not. That's why I'm saying that they want to act clever where they are not clever. Okay? So, the issue that came up about that appointment was not an acting appointment. That's why the vice president responded and said, this man has not been appointed yet because he's still subject to ratification. That was our original answer. Now I'm surprised that she's now changing that. No, he's just being appointed to act. You know? What type of Christians are we, that can be oblivious to the truth? Even as the Bible says, the truth shall set you free. Just because you want to keep a job. Okay? Now, in the question of EF being on the ground or not being on the ground,
Yes.
I'm happy, that you colleagues, I'm in the studio here with some of my colleagues that are charged with the responsibility of mobilizing this party.
Meaning they are not doing enough.
Meaning they are not doing enough.
Fire them, Mr. President. Fire them.
No.
In my presence, Mr. President.
You are now sounding like the national chairman of EF. Okay.
I sense incompetence.
But the point is, I like it. Machitabu inokufunza because bantu bamene bakambati bali pa ground EF nili nabo muno mu studio. Bamvera. Chifukwa semena baperekera chabe mawayo sembe bakambati nazipangira. Okay? The people are saying, we get your message very loud and clear, but please, can you up your game in terms of party mobilization? I think that's what I hear from the two colleagues, that raised that issue. Okay? So we shall deal with that issue internally. Okay? The other issue was on what, Zach?
So King Fred raised quite a number of issues, other than the fact that he also concurred that you are not on the ground.
Yes.
But he spoke about how the former head of state is continuously being
harassed.
Yes.
Yeah. Look, I find this issue of the former head of state very, very embarrassing. Okay? I think saving your country should not be a crime. It must be something that must be appreciated by all the citizens. And the reason why Israel is being harassed like this is because of the signals he's sending that he wants to come back. Now, that in itself is not an offense. The reason why the poor guy is being harassed is because the president himself has taken a position that he will not allow him to come back. Now, the president carries only one vote, unless the law has changed that for a head of state, he has more than one vote. Okay? I don't think that people have forgotten what PF did. So if HH doesn't want ECL to come back, the right he has as a citizen is to campaign against him when the man is back on the campaign trail. But to prejudice his right, to exercise that right, is not right. It is sending wrong signals, to the grassroots. And this reminds me of the incident that PF raised 3-4 days ago. That there was an attempt, to attack him during his jogging session. That's exactly what happened to Kapwepwe in 1970 at Kamala here, after UPP had been banned. The old man was walking, around the Kamala area when UNIP youths, pounced on him. Are we really going back to those days? With a crop of leaders today more educated than that group? I don't think that is the direction we should take.
Messages.
Yes, please.
This one says, greetings, Mr. Kabimba. Thank you for the wisdom, but why can't you share this wisdom to President HH? Because this nation is dying in the name of free education. I didn't get the name of a person who sent that message, but just take note. Hello, Lusaka. Mr. Kabimba, if you are a Zambian, why can't you take a strong step and take the leaders who are corrupt to police and evidence instead of just singing the song about corruption? This is Sam from Chingola in Solwezi Road. Let me also see if I can give you some more calls. Good morning.
Jackie, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Elvis, how are you?
I'm very fine.
Great.
Mr. President, how are you?
Fine, Elvis. Shani mana.
Ngese bwino mubashire kwa Kabunga bazaki abo bantumine ba president. Ikala ya twipaya mushi.
Ni corruption tulera ndapo yoine.
Awe na lomba palwelele.
Palwele.
Yeah, away from that, President. We warned the people of Zambia about the UPND. Shukuru Maiko, in his viral video, he told the president that president Chula. That was when the president answered in a phone call at his residence, where Shukuru Maiko asked him that Mwabuka Shani va president that itaturi winoyo ubunga na budula. Then Bashimaiko said Tamure Chula va president imwe mukaba worse than what it is. And the truth to this prophet, this is what is happening today. The most annoying thing is that they are even justifying their failures today. The UPND lied in the morning, they lied in the afternoon, they lied in the night, and they are continuing to lie up to today. Why I'm so scared about Wynter Kabimba? I've seen that most haven't paid much attention to what is happening, especially on the registration of voters. I was reading a certain article today by Karani Mutima, who has said the UPND has 5 million votes in Southern Province, 500,000 votes in Western Province. Already they have got 2 million votes because they have registered more voters in Southern Province. Then he talked about Central being shared and Northern being one of the provinces where the UPND will get a lion's share. You haven't paid much attention to this, what is happening today. This is what maybe is giving the confidence the UPND are having today. The sufferings which the people today are going through, whereby you could see ZNS coming in to bring in 230 quarter million, which to them they are saying is cheap. When it was at 150, it has been increased to 180. Then it came to 230 and they are calling it cheap. The politicians today are just fighting without seeing, we the Zambians, we are not seeing anything from you politicians about Wynter. And you tell the people who are saying that it's abantu background, to live at Wynter. We are there to speak for the opposition. Airport to let me take a campaign about Wynter.
Thank you, Elvis. You will not use this platform to campaign the EF. You end.
Yamoneka Elvis ya Kabunga.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what we are saying is that
Yeah, conclude,
in
Elvis.
conclusion,
Yeah.
in conclusion, what we are saying, the only solution this time is to put out the UPND isizwa #Bareka 2026.
Thank you.
Whether they want it or not.
Thank
They
you.
have made the people of Zambia suffer.
Thank you, Elvis.
So I want your answer, Wynter.
Thank you, Mana.
Thank you, Elvis. I have two critical questions for you. What is the position? First of all, this is from Mukuka. Let me get the name right. This is Mukuka Wellington. What is your position on the? What is the position of the EF on the return of Vedanta to KCM?
Okay.
And I think that will be important for you to have a say. I have another one. Hello, good morning, Zach and President Kabimba. So you're speaking very well and clear on matters that are affecting the nation. But what is your comment on the Electoral Advisory Board? Why this time around? And what is the mandate of the board? This is Daniel Mwanza from within Lusaka.
Okay. Zaki, can you just put one point down? I've got a colleague of mine who is listening to this program very, very closely.
Right.
And he wants us to discuss the infrastructure development in this country.
Infrastructure.
Yeah.
Please.
Okay. Away from politics. How else do we develop this country, so that all the districts and provinces are accessible? Yeah. Now, let me start.
Yes.
Let me start with the Elvis. Elvis raises a very critical point. One, the registration of voters, or the ongoing registration of voters, okay? And two, the skewed registration of voters. That's what he, by implication is saying, okay? And three, an attempt by UPND to secure an inbuilt majority
vote
in the 2026 elections. But there is something else that Elvis doesn't know. That there is a scheme between the UPND and the Americans. The UPND has been sending its cadres, to America to go and undergo some training in the use of the electronic equipment that will be used in the transmission of results in 2026. Okay? And the information we have is that the UPND has been promised by the Americans that, in fact, your vote and my vote in 2026 will only contribute 20% of the results. The other 80% of the results will come from that electronically driven system. So I want Elvis and others across the country to know. Collateral to that, linked to that, is that this is the first time in the history of this country when Zambia has had an electoral commission of Zambia that is partisan, that is affiliated, clearly affiliated to UPND or the party in power. We have never had that before. Honorable, the late Justice Mambilima was not a member of PF. And she was not a member of the MMD, for all I know. The Honorable Mr. Justice Chulu was not a member of PF. And I don't think that he was a member of the UPND, of the UPND or MMD. Okay? The person that came close, to political affiliation in my memory was the Honorable Justice Bobby Warrior, the first chairperson of the ECZ. He was very closely associated with Chiluba. But after that, we have had an ECZ that everybody looked at as an organization that could manage and administer an election impartially, except now. Now, let me tell you the ramifications of this. Is that any problem that may arise after 2026, because I can tell you, there is no way the Zambian people will agree in 2026 that UPND has won an election with ridiculous figures like the ones that are being, raised by Elvis. There's no way. There's going to be a problem in this country. Okay? And that problem would have been caused by the officials at the ECZ and also the UPND. There is a limit, Zax. You can push people that are hungry and angry. There is a limit. So, us in the opposition, we shall meet and tell UPND that electronic system is yours. We would want the results in 2026 to be counted manually. To be counted manually. So those UPND cadres you are sending to America to go and get schooled into that system, they will have no job to do. So Elvis raises a very important point. I'm just adding on to to what he has said. We know what is going on. Even this idea of trying to recruit to tender, that a local company must tender to print ballot papers is a scheme by UPND. Which company do you have in Zambia which can print? Print my receipt books. Which company do you have in Zambia that can print, ballot papers? So we know exactly what is going on, and this information is coming from inside the ECZ. This information is coming from within ECZ. Very impeccable sources. Now, that brings me to the Electoral Advisory Board. I was discussing this matter with the President Hari Kalaba. And he's shown me the letter that came from ECZ, which says that they know nothing about the advisory board. It is affiliated to the judiciary. Since when did the judiciary, get involved in elections in this country? Since when? Since when? The Chief Justice is the returning officer for the presidential elections. So we want the judiciary, now it has been made public, we want the Chief Justice to explain to this nation what role that electoral or advisory board is doing within the judiciary. We want to know. Okay? That's another. Vedanta. Vedanta is not even a problem for any opposition political party. Vedanta is a problem for the workers themselves and the people of Chingola. Those that have been doing business with Vedanta. Those that have been supplying goods and services to Vedanta. Vedanta's track record proved to be very bad. Exactly the point I was making earlier about these mining companies. There were so many complaints about or against Vedanta during that time. And this was acknowledged by the PF government then, and even the liquidator, that a lot of our people were not paid by Vedanta. What has surprised us, and before I even make that point, UPND at that time agreed that Vedanta was a bad investor. That was the position of the UPND. That Vedanta was a bad investor. What they didn't agree with was the liquidation of Vedanta. But that Vedanta was a bad investor was a common denominator between PF and UPND. And they turn around today and tell us that no, what is coming is a new Vedanta, not the old one. Kabuswe says. Silly comment. Don't worry, this is new Vedanta. not the old Vedanta that you know. Okay? Again, what we know is that Vedanta has promised money to UPND during the 2026 presidential and general elections. Now, I want to say this, that money cannot defeat people in an election. That's what I have seen myself in my experience. If money defeated people, MMD would have won the election against PF in 2011. They didn't. Because the people just said, pack and go. So UPND can take that money from Vedanta. After 2026, both Vedanta and UPND will be out.
So in conclusion, let's discuss the infrastructure development in this country.
Yeah.
And I would want your response in closing the ultimatum that the Registrar of Society has given all political parties that you need to have conventions in the next 90 days. Is it 60 days? 60 days?
60 days,
yes.
She says. Okay. Now, in 2011, I drafted the president's speech to Parliament. Personally.
He asked you to?
Yes. I sat with him, at Omero Mumba Road. It was one of his first major tasks before he even moved into State House. I personally drafted that. Carries my language, my style of writing, everything. And one of the things that Michael Sata had as a vision was infrastructure development of this country. When he was giving me the list of the roads, I said to him, "Sir, how do you know these roads?" He says, "Because I've gone around in this country, and Wynter, as I'm talking to you, I can visualize them." Now, what Michael Sata meant is this. Zax, if you are coming from Chipata and you are going to the Copper Belt province, why do you have to pass through Lusaka? Okay? When you can cross from Nyimba across into Mukushi or Serenje, why do you have to come through Lusaka, where you have no business? And there are many roads like that in this country that can link you from point A to B without having to pass through point C. Now, what that does is that it cuts down on your time of travel, it cuts down on your costs, it creates interlink markets between short distances. In geometry, there is a principle that the shortest distance between any 2 points is a straight line. That's why you see aeroplanes traveling, between 2 points in a straight line, because it helps them to cut down on fuel and to save time. When we were in the government, I proposed to Mr. Sata that the only way we can accelerate development in terms of infrastructure and the development of these districts that are being set up was to set up something that I had called the National Planning and the Urban and Rural Development Commission. Okay? And I propose that this organization should be quasi-government, but it must be composed of all professionals in the field of infrastructure development. So it must have, civil engineers. It must have quantity surveyors. It must have architects. It must have, physical urban planners, and everybody else. So that the development of these districts is systematically done. To be the body, that will liaise with the Ministry of Finance in terms of rolling out the development, of it never happened. But I think one of the reasons was that Michael died earlier than we thought. Now, what is happening now is that PF did its bit. We are now seeing a regression from that progress, from that development. Okay? This idea of the Minister of Infrastructure Development, Minister of Infrastructure, of going around the country, with cameras, and showing us where he is, and is not what is going to develop the country. We need professionals to buy into the physical infrastructure development of this country. We need the professionals, and we have the professionals in this country that can undertake that task. So for us as the economic front in government, that will be our priority. And that is exactly what the United States did. If you read the history of the United States, even when they started as 13 colonies under the Confederation, they had to decide how are those colonies going to be connected so that there is marketing is facilitated, etc., etc. And that's what you see even now with the 51 states that constitute the United States of America. You can drive from one state to another state. You won't even know that you have crossed the boundary into another state because of the infrastructure development. So there is a way of doing it, and the way it is being done now is just not correct. If you are going, to Mansa, you have only two routes, either Pedico Road, which is terrible, or Tuta Road, which takes you, hours and hours. A guy who gets on a plane from here, to London will get there before you arrive in Mansa. You have these outposts like Santhia, very good beaches, beautiful biodiversity that can attract tourists. They are just dying. They're just dying. You can't have tourism which is not anchored on your local tourists. That again takes us back to the economy, the buying power of the people. So you can't build, a hotel in Mansa which is just dependent on the government workshops, NGO workshops, and one conference in a year. Okay? I give you this example. The day when I arrived in Chelenge, and I got out and I looked at the lake, I couldn't believe it that I was in Zambia. But when you look at Chelenge, it's just a village. Just a village. So I wanted to deal with that, Let's now deal with the finally with the registrar. The chief registrar of societies has been misled. By who, I don't know. But she needs to take a step backwards and figure out whether or not she is on the right pedestal before she creates confusion. Firstly, we know that there is an attempt by UPND to kill the opposition in this country. That is, I know that my young brother Mwetwa has denied that fact. It is actually true. You see, the goodness with politics is that, let me put it this way, is that you may sit in the UPND and think that everybody is happy with what is going on. Some people are not happy, even as they are UPND. There are Zambians that believe in this country, and they believe in the right way of doing things in this country. but they happen to find themselves in UPND and things are not going right. There were people in PF that were PF members, but they didn't agree with the way PF was going about things. There are people everywhere. That's the goodness with politics. So you may sit in a room and hatch something and think that all of you, because you are UPND, therefore everybody is agreeable. There's one or two people that may not be agreeable, whose conscience cannot allow them to agree. So we know, and we've got information that there's an attempt to kill the UPND. To kill the opposition. Killing the UPND will be okay, but the opposition, no. There's an attempt to kill the opposition. So they are doing everything possible, sponsoring court actions, or this electronic thing that I've just been discussing, staffing ECZ, with partisan officials, etc., etc. So they are hoping that one of the bullets will catch us in the opposition. And this is one of the bullets being fired. Now, let me explain it quickly this way. The registrar of societies is not a regulatory
body.
Office. It's not a regulatory body. It is a registrative body. And the parallel that I offer to this explanation is PACRA. PACRA is not a regulatory entity. It is a registrative entity. So when you go to register to incorporate at PACRA, the PACRA people tell you, bring the following information. If you want your company to be treated as a Zambian company, bring the following. Give us the national registration cards, green national registration cards of all the shareholders. Then under the law, your company will be treated as a Zambian company. That's what you bring the objects of the company. For us to ensure that we are not registering a company which is going to get involved in the activities that may be against national security. Bring us to association so that we know how this company is going to be managed. Once you have successfully submitted those documents, PACRA falls out of your way, except for the annual returns. So if you want to update, your records, you file annual returns. It is not the job of PACRA to ask you how many times you hold your board meetings. No. Because the articles of association bind the members and nobody else. So if a member is unhappy, they go to court. Likewise, they register information to that office and returns annually. It is not her job or his job in the event that a man is appointed to ask political parties how they are observing their constitutions. That is a job for the members. And that's why Miles Sampa went to court to go and obtain an order of the court to order the PF to go for the convention. Didn't have to come from the registrar. He went to court because he was saying this party, political party to which I belong, is in breach of this constitution to which I'm a subscriber. Where does the chief registrar get the powers to tell any political party to hold a convention within 60 days? And where did she get the 60 days from? From her head? From her dream? No, you must you know, because that's what the Constitution says. Read the Constitution, madam, again. The Constitution says all matters arising out of this Constitution shall be determined by the Concord, not by you as Chief Registrar. So she is wrong, and we shall not comply with that 60 days. She can do what she wants to do, and we shall face her in court.
Mr. Wynter Kabimba, State Council, leader of the Economic Front Party, I thank you very much for coming today, and we sure hope that we'll host you soon, as obviously events unfold in this country. But we really appreciate, and we hope that you will be on the ground for the people.
Thank you, Zaki. You know, I'm going on the ground now.
We are grateful. Well, thanks very much to you, our listeners as well, who participated in this program, and those that followed our conversation religiously. We appreciate. We also appreciate our partner radio stations that carried this program live. We will certainly be back next week with another edition. And from us all, it's goodbye. Take care of yourselves and also of each other.